So greetings, everyone from Suwon, dear colleagues, partners, and member state delegates and participants. Welcome. My name is Boston Liu. I'm the head of partnership at UNESCO International Institute for Higher Education. On behalf of Mr. Francis Pedro, the director of UNESCO ESOC, it is our honor to welcome everyone to the Futures of Higher Education parallel session as part of this very first UNESCO International Forum on the Futures of Education. If I may, please kindly join me to welcome our distinguished guests today. Ms. Farida Shahid, the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Education, who will join us through a video message. And then Mr. Abdirizak Ibrahim, the Technical Advisor for Monitoring and Evaluation at the Ministry of Education, Culture, and Higher Education in Somalia. Please. And next, please allow me to invite Ms. Sofia Bermudez, the founder and director of One Generation and a member of UNESCO Institute for Youth and Student Network. And now, please allow me to welcome Ms. Hilege Van Long, the Secretary General of the International Association of Universities. And last but not least, Mr. Boo Sung Park, Professor and Director of Center for Anthropocene Studies at the Korea Advanced Institute of Science and Technology. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Well, this gathering comes at a very pivotal moment when the global community is faced with pressing questions about the futures of education. And the theme, renewing the social contract for education, invites us to reflect on how education can address global inequalities, foster inclusivity, and drive sustainability. And for today's session, which is on the futures of higher education, we want to acknowledge that higher education holds a transformative role in shaping sustainable development. Universities and colleges worldwide have demonstrated their commitment to the SDGs, translating intentions into measurable impacts. And as we convene here today, it's crucial to explore how higher education systems can further align with societal needs, advancing equity and opportunity for all. So if I may, we'd like to start with sharing some of the findings from the Futures of Higher Education projects led by UNESCO ESOC that has addressed the critical questions on the roles of higher education institutions worldwide in contributing to the SDGs, translating ideas into the impacts that we hope to see. So initiated in 2021 under the framework of UNESCO's Futures of Education flagship initiative, which gathers us here for this forum. This multi-phase project asks experts, students, and partners with two key questions. The first one is, how would you like higher education to be in 2050? And the second one is, how could higher education contribute to better futures for all in 2050? In this multi-phase consultation and answering those questions, we started with an expert consultation, moved to the public consultation, and concluded with a very meaningful youth consultation. So to start with, phase one, expert consultation, we had a total of 25 experts across all 5 UNESCO regions, including Asia and Pacific, Africa, Arab states, Latin America, and the Caribbean, as well as Europe and North America. And among the participation of the 25 experts on the topic of future studies, the result really painted a compelling vision for 2050, centered on higher education's responsibility to promote sustainability, inclusivity, and interconnectedness, acting as connector and really bridges among learners, institutions, communities, and industries globally to a shared commitment to the common good. An expert also stressed that the role of higher education institutions in fostering collective responsibility, supporting sustainable development goals, and embracing diverse knowledge systems that are often marginalized in mainstream educational models. And at this very core of transformation is the idea that education needs to happen with a soul, in which higher education is guided by the values beyond academic achievement, guided by dialogues, reflections, solidarities, interdisciplinarities, and creative and flexible pathways to nurture human potentials and foster a sense of responsibility towards the world. And those principles resonate really strongly with the results from the youth consultation with teenagers aged from 15 to 17 from 43 countries, which also expressed really strong desire for higher education to be accessible, innovative, and aligned with societal needs, especially in addressing global issues like climate change, poverty, and inequality. And for those who are really transiting into higher education, their voices are something that we must listen and hope to address, because as much as they have hopes, there are also fears. And it's the fears that are presented in some of their responses really connecting to pressing global challenges such as poverty, war, and climate change, and the uncertainty about the realization of their personal aspirations, with a high proportion, actually over 90%, are planning to attend higher education. It is a rate that have far surpassed the global enrollment in higher education. And challenging the current assumption that the main motivation to higher education is career development and higher income, youth have identified the opportunity for higher education is to acquire knowledge as a prior benefit of pursuing it. And as previously mentioned, this consultation also includes a public survey disseminated globally, which we received a total of 1,199 responses, comprising 97 countries worldwide. And within this very rich global diversity, the data analysis resulted in the identification of 4 mainstream pathways to the future of higher education, which counted on board the agreement of the respondent, and they are: number 1, quality of life. To provide opportunities for all, access to higher education must be expanded and should be affordable. What is taught in higher education and how it is taught should be adapted to individuals and driven by student choice. Number 2, social change. Engagement in society and communities should become more integral to education, teaching, research, and science. And the core functions of higher education must become more relevant to societal and community needs. And 3, care of the environment. Sustainability should be at the core of everything higher education does through an orientation that's both global and local. And higher education has an urgent responsibility to address environmental, climate, and other global challenges. And 4th, development of technology. As we move towards a more digitalized reality, higher education has a very important role in researching, developing, and sharing new technological development, as well as research and innovation on their use and impact. And technology will increasingly impact teaching, as well as research management and engagement functions of higher education. So what do we do, and how can we get out of those findings? Maybe to pave the road into the future, the very first step is to understand that higher education can be relevant to everyone and can contribute to everyone's vision in linking knowledge and practices into society, industry, and life in general. And looking into the future, we must address a very pervasive myth that higher education is an elite pathway reserved for the field. It's time to change this narrative that equalizes higher education to exclusivity. And higher education is and must be seen as a public and common good and a right for all. One that nurtures human potential, fosters social cohesion, and contributes to the common good. And this vision calls for policies that support affordable, inclusive, and quality higher education, breaking down financial, geographical, and cultural barriers. And higher education should be a space where everyone's aspirations are recognized, regardless of their background, and where social mobility is not just a possibility, but a reality. So with that said, if you may, please allow me to kindly pass the floor to Ms. Farida Shahid, the Special Rapporteur on right to education, to pave the road on a right-based approach for the future of higher education.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me say how very sorry I am at not being there with you in person, because ever since I learned about this conference, I was really excited and looking forward to hear, learn, and be inspired by new thinking, diverse views, and how people are already reshaping education through local initiatives. Excited because I'm convinced that after the Future of Education Commission report and the Transforming Education Summit, this really is the next vital step in shaping a vision of education's future and forging a new social contract for this. In the midst of rapid, sometimes bewildering changes and development of technology, including AI, the bombardment of our senses with information, disinformation, misinformation, deepfakes, in a context of climate crises, deepening inequalities, societal polarization, and too many left behind. A new social contract is as challenging as it is essential, for we are indeed faced with an existential challenge. After all, the future of our world, our future, that of our children, grandchildren, and their offspring, depends so heavily on the future of education, what and how we teach and with what objectives in mind. The question we need to ask ourselves, and policymakers must decide, is what is the purpose of education? And as we step into this challenge, let me share some of my worries. One, too often, decisions around education are made by people with no expertise or background in education, and they don't involve those who are immediately impacted, the learners, the teachers, and their communities. Secondly, insufficient budgets or budget cuts undermine public education and therefore the access of the majority of people to education. I worry about privatization that may be helping to reduce education to a conveyor belt for the market and profit. And recently I was distressed when liberal arts professors in a US Ivy League college approached me, asking me what I could do to ensure their survival and informing me that many were retooling themselves for tech-related jobs because they were told that their subjects were not financially viable or did not or produce marketable skills. Distressed because really there's very little that I can do myself personally, but I sincerely hope that we can collectively come up with solutions in this conference, or at least illuminate a few pathways forward, for it would be real tragedy if we were to lose this huge part of humanity's creativity and thinking. I worry about digital and AI technologies that may be channeling education towards a singular worldview and purpose. As I keep saying, digital and AI tools are just that, tools. And the question is who has access to these, how they're used, and how they're governed. I know some people believe that the old structure of classrooms and schools must be completely discarded as archaic and that everything should be online or at least hybrid. This was a solution that was proposed during COVID in my country too, but I know that this remained an illusion, in fact almost a false promise for those without devices and connectivity and electricity, and that teachers in low-income areas came up with perfectly good non-digital solutions of how to continue education. Digital and AI technologies are certainly deepening the inequalities between people within and across countries. So how do we counter this? I'm concerned about the role of teachers, who are often no longer the main source of information. So we must find ways to value teachers, ensure good working conditions for them, for without educators, there can be no education. We need to think collectively with educators, learners, communities about the best way to define their role, and in the current diverse circumstances, how can they stimulate creative thinking, help learners understand cultural diversity and navigate different viewpoints, understand and help others understand how to use new technology safely, and these are just a few aspects. I worry about a singular vision of knowledge that excludes the diversity of human learning and ways of knowing, whereas creative diversity is precisely what defines humanity. I'm concerned at increasing restrictions on academic freedom, which is antithetical to the freedom indispensable for scientific research and art creative activity as aptly defined in the International Covenant on Economic and Social Cultural Rights. I worry about safety in schools and en route to educational institutions, about the increasing presence of security personnel and police in schools, which surely cannot help anyone's learning. I worry about so many things. I'm sorry, but it comes with the territory. So to me, the human right to education, that is lifelong learning as a public and common good, must be centered on 4 key pillars. Learning to know, to do, to live together, and to be, as given in the Dolores report. We must understand the vitality of free thinking, exploration, and expression in the teaching learning process and in its diverse forms, and ensure that all educational and related processes, structures, and systems align with the aim of education under international human rights law. Education is about nurturing human creativity for the good of all and enabling people to reach their full potential, whether this is in terms of ideas and philosophy, science and technology, or artistic expressions. We need to harness all of humanity's creativity to help shape a more just, inclusive, and sustainable future for all. This means rethinking the 3 key aspects of education: pedagogy, curriculum, and assessment. And of course, the new social contract for education must be grounded in the vision of the future we desire, and I hope we'll see something at the end of this conference. I know that all the remarkable participants here will have many amazing ideas and experience to share, and I wish everyone an exciting, fruitful discussions, and simply regret not being there with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Farida, for paving the ground for us. And I hope what Farida mentioned on the human creativity part that can lead to the just, inclusive future for us all can be a good foundation to start today's discussion and to really rethink about the probable, the possible, and the desirable futures at different levels and what we can achieve through concrete terms. So today's discussion with our very fantastic panelists who are present here today will be mostly around 2 topics, with the first one being vision based. What would higher education system and institutions become in 2050, with the follow-up round on round 2, focusing on the actions, on what would actually take step by step in achieving those visions for higher education. So with that said, I hope our panelists are up for the challenge. So our audiences, because we are going to have a discussion session after their intervention and sharing their visions and the concrete steps. So Sophia, if you don't mind, being an outstanding youth leader and really the current and also the role models of the future generation, can you please share from the perspective of young leaders and students of what are the 3 key areas that you see higher education should prioritize to truly be relevant and inclusive by 2050?
Thank you very much, Lily. Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be today with you all. I think, first of all, I'm going to go to basics, accessibility, especially in the countries in the global south. So accessibility to higher education continues to be a problem. I know we all know the global numbers, but to understand more the problem on the global south level, I'm going to talk about my country, Argentina, and share with you some data. For example, in Argentina, more than 2,600 primary schools in Argentina, rural schools, don't have a secondary nearby, let alone to talk about a university nearby. So for these communities, education is not a priority, not because it's not important, but because they cannot afford it. So it's not a reality, not a possibility for most of them. That would be the first data. The second one is that actually in Argentina, we have 80% of students, all the students that are enrolled right now in Argentina are attending public and free universities. 80% of students in the whole country are attending public and free universities. And from this number, this 80%, 48% are first generation in their families to access higher education. That's crazy. That's the numbers we are managing today in 2024. So first of all, accessibility. in order to understand education as Lily mentioned before, a social mobility tool. Students today understand higher education as social mobility tool, understand higher education as this biggest opportunity to better opportunities, to a better future, to better jobs, to be better, to go beyond what their families achieved so far and have better opportunities in their lives. The second point would be new methodologies. Well, I'm from an organization that's called One Generation, and the founder and director. We continue to talk and work with high school students and university students, and they continue to say that they don't find learning attractive. Not because they don't want to do it, but because they go to university and no one motivates them to learn. No one explains them the basic. Why are we learning? Why are we doing this? So new generations, of course, are different from the older generations, even from my generation, because I'm a millennial, the Gen Zs are even different. But we need to step up. We need new things. We need these new innovative methodologies for students not to feel that they just enter a classroom, they sit for 1 hour and a half, and then they go as if nothing changes, nothing happens, nothing encourages them to think differently. That's one of the main things that we listen to all the time. And the third thing, it will be learning focused on solutions. Students want to use the learning. They continue to ask, why I'm learning this? I can Google this. I can ChatGPT this. I need a learning that can be applied to look for solutions that I can use tomorrow to find a job, to enter the workforce, to be valuable in that sense. The students, even first year of university students, are very worried for the tomorrow, for the future. I'm going to be able to use this for work, or is it going to be just one Google, search behind the knowledge I already have? So that would be the other thing. And these not only these learning focus on solutions, but also oriented to the workforce, in order to also foster that students can continue to work and remain in their communities, and they don't have to displace to go somewhere else to find a job. So they can fit the knowledge, the tools that they are being teach in higher education institutions, to use them for the good of their communities and the needs of their communities as well. That would be my first take.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I mean, those are indeed very key areas, but what I'm also hearing are the responses and the collaboration with other stakeholders in addressing some of those areas. For example, the accessibility, which is highly relevant to affordability, who's going to pay, right? Let's use the word burden, should the burden only be on students and family, or should it only be on the public sector, or what would be the role of the private sector in civil society? That question will need to be answered together by all of us, not to neglect, of course, the contributions of the higher education institutions themselves. And for the creative and flexible learning pathways, outstanding ideas. But what can quality assurance work together hand in hand to ensure that whatever that have been provided to the future and of course the current generation of students, how can they translate their efforts into acknowledgement of their degrees? And last but not least, the solution-focused learnings. To what extent can we actually engage and should engage communities and industries in the design of higher education planning? All those remain as questions, which I now hope our very experienced technical advisor for monitoring and evaluation at the ministry in Somalia, Abdi Rizak, can have some answers through your experience in policy making and also in project implementation with the very strong pillar for MNE. What kind of transformations do we envision for higher education systems in Africa and the Global South by 2025, particularly addressing those regional challenges and opportunities?
Okay, thank you so much, Lily. Thank you for having me, and I'm very happy to be here among these panelists to talk about higher education. As you said, the role of higher education is very important. We cannot be able to underrate that, especially in terms of technological advancement that is needed and the future that we aspire the world, and also in terms of solving the problems that we currently face. And I think the most important thing that I can be able to say, three things. Number one is about accessibility. I concur with my sister here. We were developing the National Transformation Plan in Somalia, and particularly, and some of the things that we were addressing is about inclusive accessibility of higher education. We have only one public higher education in Somalia. That means that others are private institutions, and we want to expand accessibility of for graduates and youth to access higher education, particularly affordable higher education. Private institutions are very expensive, especially for countries with a high poverty rate. So that is very important, we say, because the solution that we aspire, what we want to see in the future, lies among the young people. And in Africa, more than 60% of the population is under the age of 25. So that means that we need to have young people. We are relying on the young people to, in higher education, to solve the problem, the technological advancement that we need, that the climate change and the health problems that we are facing to change. That is where the solution lies. And then the other one is about regional integration and collaboration. We talk about the Pan-African Network for Exchange Program. We only have, you can say that, unity is strength. And institutions, even though higher educations, even though they are autonomous, but we can only make a difference if we collaborate and have a partnership in terms of locally, regionally, and also globally. I think that is the future we are aspiring. And in Somalia, in particular, we are joining the East Africa Cooperation. Somalia was voted in to join the East Africa Cooperation. So that is a very positive, change for people of Somalia, especially in higher education or in education in general, whereby we want to see how we are going to collaborate and be part of the East African community. Clear transformation pathway. Students who these are form 4 graduates from in Somalia can be able to continue and see a clear pathway to transition to other higher education institutions within, not only global, but within the region. We start with the region first and then to the other parts. There must be that. And then under that, the plan that we were developing, we have the national qualification framework. That is part of the things that we are addressing, so that there is a smooth transition of the qualification from Form 4 or post-secondary education to transition either for Tibet and for higher education. That will allow many young people, in Africa or in Somalia, to be able to get access to affordable and quality higher education. And then the last one I'm talking about is addressing the regional challenges that we talk about. Is something that is very important, especially the problems that is particularly affecting Africa. We had, of course, COVID-19 was a global, phenomena, but we have other specific health, issues like, the H1N1, the Ebola crisis. That the higher education institutions, we aspire them to solve the problems of health problems in the country, to conduct research and to establish that in the laboratories and the research centers, so that we get evidence-based policies or evidence-based solutions based on the problems affecting particularly Somalia, in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, that this is very, very, let's say, in a way, exciting to hear what at nation state level and the implementation as well as the planning prior to the implementation can take place in supporting with higher education's development in benefiting mostly the 60% of youth that are present in exchanging with other regions. And if I say, among the a lot of impressive points that you have mentioned, one key sentence really touched me, and that's what you said about unity is the strength. And it is. And the examples that you brought up with the Pan-Africa Network and the East Africa Cooperation are very relevant in actually providing those opportunities at higher education level to, let's say, the potential beneficiaries from individuals to the national level. So thank you so much for that. And if I may, UNESCO ESOC and the UN Office of South-South Cooperation have co-launched a South-South University Cooperation Network back in 2022 at COP28. And we have been very actively working on engaging a number of universities to join this network. And by, let's say, great mind thinks alike, it's also very evidence-based in identifying regional synergies in terms of challenges, as well as common solutions. But it adds a pillar to the action-based portion to allow the exploration and actual feasible transferability actions across the different regions. And we would love to have Somalia to be part of it, both with the public university as a member university, as well as the ministry as a partner to the network and providing guidance and co-planning for 2026 to 2030, 5 years before the next agenda cycle comes. So thank you so much. And with the very positive message of unity is the strength, I would like to invite Hilage, whom I think will have a lot to share in this regard, and under the big framework of what should higher education development institution become in 2050. We would love to hear from your perspective on the role of a university association in shaping the transformation of higher education institutions, especially in ensuring that right-based higher education is relevant to both local needs as well as global impacts. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Lily, and very good to listen already to you, both on the many different topics that are on the agenda of higher education. I would like to greet also everyone in the room who already have shared so many ideas. I see many of the speakers from other sessions. We've been talking over the past 2 days in this forum much about the transformation of education, but much of what has been discussed actually also applies to higher education. There is a real need to rethink what we do, and we've heard from Farida Shahid today about her worries about the future, about safety, about the denying of the right to academic freedom, about the policy in school, about the education systems not being able to live up to expectations. But I would like to say that many of the education systems are not given the opportunity to rise up to the expectations because they're not supported. We're very good at slashing and bashing on the education system instead of supporting it for its many values. And so thinking about the question about where we will be in 2050, I also consulted the IAU board, the International Association of Universities board, made of 25 higher education leaders from around the world, the 5 continents, and invited them to think about it. And so it was actually very much aligned to many of the conversations we've had on the other levels of education, always recalling that we should not forget that higher education is an integral part of the continuum from pre-primary to lifelong, which is not always the case. Very interesting to hear that in Somalia you have only one public university and that the rest is private. And I would really like in the conversation, also outside and after this session, to hear more how the articulation finds its place in a conversation between the public and the private, and how to actually engage in a value-based conversation. So by 2050, where will higher education institutions and systems even be? They will have to transform, because that is true. There is a need for more dynamic entities addressing global challenges, while also maintaining strong ties to local context. So it's the local and the global, and the global and the local. It's really connected. We're not living in any isolation, and we should understand that. Whereas we see many more countries closing in, or even continents closing in, instead of going to further cooperation and enhanced participation in each other's systems by supporting the diversity and being very dialogical about it. This requires regular redefining the purpose of universities, the methods used, the societal role, and yes, the technological innovation and globalization will drive the transformation of higher education, but higher education must navigate itself and must actually steer the way into the future and not only be reactive. They need to be proactive, they need to be part of the conversation and really address the persistent inequalities and embrace a vision of equity, innovation, and lifelong learning. But for that, they need strong support politically, socially, and financially, including from all the stakeholders, the students, and the staff. And so it's interesting to see that there are so many challenges all the time that the whole system itself is questions from within. Will it help me? Yes, it will help everyone, because if we acquire the possibility to acquire knowledge and to have a critical thinking and critical view over the future, we will be able to actually transform the world into a better one. So universities is not only instrumental, something, a tool that you can use to get a job tomorrow. It's about how to acquire the capacity to think and to think differently and to think and locally and nationally and internationally and globally. And how to actually then connect the realities and be a transformative person as an individual and as a citizen, as an integral part of society. So if technology will be fundamentally reshaping higher education, traditional classrooms will probably give way to flexible, hybrid learning environments. We've heard many examples over the last 2 days, and Korea is a very strong example of that. Yesterday, we were with a small group at the School of Ceramics, and we saw how this transformation is actually taking place, where you have these big screens in the classrooms, where you have this connection between the internet and the teacher and the student back to the teacher. Yet we will need hybrid learning environments that will combine the advanced algorithms, high quality content, self-directed studies, but essential mentorship for educators. We need to valorize the teachers, and that call has been made a few times. Also, the professors in universities, who should not only be driven to research, but also be the professors who actually can translate research that they undertake and bring on board of their endeavor the students and the staff and the whole community and the community outside of the university. So personalized education will probably also replace curricula as we know it today, because it's often seen as a bit constraining, yet there is a value as well in a curriculum. A curriculum is not coming out of the sky for nothing. It is a co-construction of something that is actually leading to better understanding something. So if we only have chopped up opportunities, and I will do like in the supermarket, I take a bit of this, a bit of that, and I take whatever I want. Am I equipped as a student to know exactly what I need? No, I don't think so. The first 3 years should be essential in opening the whole library of potential, offering the opportunity to really segue into interdisciplinary approaches to education and bringing the capacity of students to the full by offering them the opportunity to look into what is there and then make informed decisions about the future. So mentorship for educators, and there again, very strong support for the education profession of the professionals in universities. So personalized education, yes, but with interdisciplinary learning and catering to what is needed also when it comes to understanding a discipline and then connecting one discipline to another one. Such a model could create globally connected yet locally relevant learning spaces, expanding access, the question that you both are raising, and enriching the educational experience. So what then do we do about rising costs? And maybe you said also, and both of you as well, Abdirizak and sorry, Sophia. Very sorry, we met only yesterday, and I'm not very strong at names, but I'm very strong at faces, so we'll never forget you again. But the rising costs of education and the persistence and inequalities should compel higher education institutions to focus on quality, accessibility, but collaboration. Today, we're far too much focusing on competition and running for what is so-called the best. What is the best? The best is in everyone, in every system around the world. And there are many bests in everyone, wherever we are. So we have to connect these bests in order to indeed get to a better world. So we have to counter trends towards privatization. At the IU, we really advocate against a strong privatization if the privatization is for profit and totally unrooted from the local and the global. Universities should offer shared courses, customable degree pathways, ensuring affordability and inclusivity. Collaboration instead of competition among institutions will enable lesser-known universities with strong teaching and research capabilities to thrive alongside prestigious ones. So universities will extend their mission to lifelong learning, offer continuous education to alumni and to global communities of learners, and they will prepare individuals to adapt to evolving demands of society. So we need to focus again on ethics, on humanities. We need to really look at a vision for the future of excellence and equity, which is a different one from the one that is based on competition. By 2050, higher education institutions should develop into centers of excellence in everyone, through teaching, research, societal engagement, and recognized as such by humanity. So universities have to actually become advocates of what they are, what they do, what they actually support. They need to engage further into societal conversations in order to also have this opportunity to co-create better ground for understanding and valorization of the education endeavor, again, from pre-primary to lifelong. So they should democratize education, offer the opportunities for the many diverse populations, and grow networks where institutions can be empowered, where individuals can feel empowered, and so that they can acquire not only the knowledge, but also those skills that you saw yesterday on that beautiful screen, and really go into the value-based higher education that we need. Because we need to see the higher education system embody innovation, inclusivity, ethical responsibility. And it's only then that it will be transformative forces for equity progress and address the world's most pressing challenges that will lead to a more sustainable future. So 2 minutes, if you allow me, and I will take less time the second time around, promise. Who are we as an IAU? We were created in 1950. So already 75 years of strong cooperation between universities. And we were created under the auspices of UNESCO to actually build peace from higher education cooperation to move us into the future. And the Global Forum for Higher Education leaders and institutions convene universities from around the world along same lines as ESL in a sense, but for so many years really connecting the different parts of the world to engage a dynamic leadership role for higher education in society. We need to articulate the fundamental values and principles that underpin education, the pursuit, dissemination, and application of knowledge. The association advocates for the development of higher education policies that respect these diverse perspectives, promote social responsibility, contributes to a sustainable future. So we need value-based leadership. We need internationalization for society and the global common good. We need higher education really engaged in sustainable development. And I see here colleagues from the United Nations universities with whom we engage very strongly in regional centers of expertise on how universities can connect with the other education systems to drive sustainable development. And we need to look at the digital transformation of higher education, what it means, and really address the challenges and the fears that Frida was actually calling for in her speech. So to conclude on this, the IAU really fosters a lot of attention on core values. And what are these core values of universities today? Way beyond a very practical application of universities, academic freedom, institutional autonomy, social responsibility locally and globally. It's cooperation and solidarity. It's tolerance of divergent opinion. It is equity and access and success. It's scientific integrity, ethical behavior as cornerstones of conduct for all stakeholders in higher education, from students, staff, academics, and all those coming through the institution. It is higher education and research in the public interest, and it is really quality in learning, research, and outreach. And for that, I will emphasize again, we need strong support from the politicians, and we need strong support financially for the universities to live up to a promise that they actually have to deliver.
Thank you so much, Luigi. This is very rich intervention, and really thank you for consulting the board members as well as the cluster of universities to have this very collective answers on what you have provided. And if I may summarize what you said in one word that's really stuck in my mind, it's ecosystem. You have really, pinpoint that higher education is within the ecosystem of education sectors across different levels. The local context is also in the ecosystem of global challenges and solutions. There's also the support of higher education that's needed is also in the ecosystem of the overall support of stakeholders from the perspective of political, social, financial, and technological aspect, which are very necessary. And last but not the least, the knowledge and skills acquired and provided and through higher education institutions are within the ecosystem of ethics and humanity. And those are really important reminders for us to be constantly reminded and alerted of why we're here in higher education institutions and what do we want our future generations to get on of it. And with that said, if I may, with maybe one example among the many values that our humanity we have, when I have a question on climate change. And we would like to invite Bong Sung to really address, given your very specific background on Anthropocene, which is a very particular field that links humanity and the planet. If you can elaborate on your vision for how higher education institutions can address the challenges of climate change, that would be wonderful. The floor is yours. Thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm very delighted to be here. And that's a big question.
I know you're up for the challenge.
Yeah, how many minutes do I have?
Your whole life, I would say, and maybe pass it on to the next generation as well.
Okay, I will do my best. Well, first of all, because I'm the only Korean among the panelists, I just want to say welcome to Korea. And then probably you recognize how dynamic Korean society is, especially in the political sector. Overnight, and there are so many things going, and still probably it's going while we are doing the conversations. And taking a look at the whole South Korean history, it has been a very dynamic, roller coaster. After World War II, we were one of the poorest country and just got liberated from colonizer, and then we went through the Korean War for 3 years, and then rebuilt. What I'm trying to say is that the higher education, the universities, are playing a very, very important role in nation building. Nation building, not only in terms of expanding the education base, but also in terms of what's the direction that we have to take in the values, spirits, and democracy, and all those are very importantly ingrained in the higher education, and especially during the military dictatorship in the 70s and 80s, the universities are the place of the democratization movement, and then it leads to a real democracy in the 1987. So I was kind of a personal story. I was a college student at the time, so I could see the situations. And you talked about the accessibility and affordability. And at that time, going to college was kind of a privilege. Only 20% of young students were able to go, and other 80% going to other occupational ones and other areas. But now, over 90% of Korean students can go to college. So expansion of the number of students going to college is achieved. But still, there is a lot of problems as you said, competitiveness, the emphasis on competition and excellence, and then driving students in it. So the students back then, like 50 years ago, and then students today have the same stress. It's a different kind of stress. So I think affordability, the overcoming affordability, the problem, resolving the affordability problem is important, but at the same time, we have to find a good direction and then good value in the higher educations. And I think sustainability is one of those the values. And the basic premise of new social contract for education is to make the just, equitable, and sustainable futures, right? And then there are three important core values: justice and equity and sustainability. And then I want to emphasize that those are intertwined, not separate. It looks like they are separate values. They are not. And the concept of the Anthropocene is precisely about this interconnectedness of social changes and planetary changes. Anthropocene is a geological concept meaning human epoch, which signifies that we are living on the earth greatly transformed by human activities. So human-made, new era, the Anthropocene. So the intensification of human activities is most notable since the mid-20th century. It can be traced back to the time of the Industrial Revolution, the 19th century, and even further back to the early expansion of capitalism and imperialism and colonialism since the 16th century. So it's a historically embedded justice problem and an embedded equality problem there. And the current global warming is not a natural phenomenon. The climate crisis is a human-made, as you all know, and in this sense, it's a cultural and political crisis. It's a crisis of our imagination. What kind of future we want to build? And then we just build and build and build something without talking about for whom and for what. And so that's the problem. I think higher education should take this message seriously, the message of the Anthropocene. Because what we are confronting these days is not just about how to pass down a sustainable future, sustainable earth to the next generation. We are confronting the issue of habitability of the earth or livability, whether the earth is a place to live, and because we are confronting the possibility of extinctions, great extinctions. So we should teach in the universities the message of the Anthropocene and do the research for living together in this damaged planet. And I think technology is extremely important, but we have to be very cautious about our optimisms. And I'm going to stop here, and if we have a second round of discussion, I can jump in.
Thank you so much, Boson. This is very, very helpful in a way that you asked two very key questions. One is for whom, and the other is for what. And it's also important that you mentioned at the core of those questions is actually the values that defines the interconnectedness of the various factors, such as humanity and the planet that we live in. And during the Futures of Higher Education project that we conducted at UNESCO ESOC, in supporting with the Futures of Education flagship project and UNESCO overall, there was a theory of change. And as part of the theory of change, there was skill identified for the accelerator for the goal to be eventually achieved. And very interestingly, to a certain extent, to our surprise, the number one skill identified in this whole theory of change is actually values, and that's 14.14% among all the public participants who answered the survey on the vision to 2050. So I think a lot of the general public echo with what you said, and I think the questions of for whom and for what are yet to be answered, but at least people are on the same page with the foundation of the value that they should carry to be identified before those questions that can be answered. And thank you so much for also mentioning, about the role of science, technology, and innovation. We do have a second round, and that's actually a question that's diverted to you. So if you don't mind, we're going to move to the second round under the big question of what would it take to achieve those visions for higher education? And the question specifically for you is, what role should science, technology, and innovation play in shaping contributions to a sustainable and equitable future for society and addressing the challenges brought by and through posting from your expertise?
Sure. So the first and second.
Exactly.
Okay, I didn't expect that, but well, I'm not an expert on higher education. I'm in the higher education. I'm a university professor. So I keep thinking about the role of the higher education, but at the same time, I witness the dramatic changes that the higher educations are experiencing these days, and the challenges. And what are the most important challenges these days? Three things: AI, and inequality, and climate change. I think the three things are sort of shaping the concerns, major concerns. And AI is extremely powerful in this course about the futures of higher education, because the academic leaders are saying that it's an epoch-changing event and the fourth industrial revolution, and we have to have more AI courses and so on. And then students respond. About half of the students coming in, we have about 700 students, undergraduate students coming every year, and about half of them are entering into AI-related departments rather than others. In other words, it's a sort of over concentrations of certain fields at the expense of other fields, so that the humanities and social sciences are in a very the weak point in higher education these days. And also within the science and technology, certain fields are becoming extinct. And so I'm a big fan of science and technology, but at the same time, we have to have a clear understanding of what's going on today, and then what are the desirable futures out of this strong. Innovation is good, but in the universities, it's so much innovation-driven policies are changing the balance and then changing the values and then giving a kind of a teaching students that if we have a better technology, we can fix all the problems. Like a kind of a technological fix or eco-modernism kind of approach. But in history, we know that the technology can solve the problem, but new technology can create new problems, new challenges. It's like a double-edged sword. It's so that we have to keep a close eye on the direction of the technology and the purpose of technology and for whom and for what we are developing the technology. We should keep asking ourselves and for the sustainable futures. It's not just a sustainable growth. And then we have to have a value better than just the growth. And then it's, I think, a coexistence, living together could be an alternative stuff.
Thank you so much. Also, really, really outstanding to be here from the higher education institution's perspective firsthand and what you have experienced and identifying the challenges. And in terms of AI, of course, and it's a very hot topic. It's a very concurrent topic, and it's a very important topic, not neglecting the challenges that we face along with the emergence of AI as well as other emerging technologies. So thank you so much for the reminder, well, UNESCO, IASOC, and the Union University have co-launched the United Nations Higher Education Sustainable Initiative Action Group on the Futures of Higher Education and Artificial Intelligence, which I'm not going to go into details now because I also have our focal point from you, Jerome, who will explain later in the discussion session. But yes, we would really hope that we invite the higher education institution delegates who are present here today to join us in this efforts of identifying how can technology be helpful in the context of higher education and how we can move forward with shaping the landscape and balancing the values we see. With that said, we need partnership. We need universities to work together, but we need beyond just universities working together. We need higher education stakeholders to work together overall. So with that said, Hilige, if you don't mind, another question we have for you focuses on how can higher education institutions strengthen partnership and networks to align their efforts with the global higher education and development goals?
Yes, thank you for that question. I was wondering, to wake everybody up, who is a fan of Charlie Chaplin? Have you seen Modern Times? So that's where we're going. We have this modern times actually impacting on us, and we will enter in these machines and we will not know why, and we will not change the world for the better if that's what we do. So it's a bit in reaction to what you just also said. If we do not go back to the human side of things, it will be very complicated to actually trigger the transformation that we need. And we need partnership to actually change the coin sides and to transform. So we need to foster collaboration and alliances. And how do we do that? We started when the Global Agenda 2030 was adopted. We created a global cluster on higher education and research for sustainable development, where we created a huge global cluster and puzzle. We invited institutions from around the world on the different continents, from different sizes, different mandates, visions, and missions, to come up and say, I would like to champion SDG 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until 16, 17 is the IAU. And then each lead institution was then to also embark on the next puzzle and to really then create a subcluster on each of the SDGs. And that was very difficult. It was very funny to see how they did not know somebody. If you're from Africa, Ghana, they did not know who to work with in South Africa, or they did not know who to work with in Asia. They did not know who exactly to work with in Europe or in the Arab world or in name it. So that puzzle was a very interesting one. It took about a year to really consolidate that subcluster creation, where we wanted to break away from the logical, normal, more network-oriented dynamics that already existed. We didn't want to just replicate what already was there. We really invited the university to think outside of the box. And that generated an incredible encounter between very diverse institutions who then embarked on looking at the curriculum, looking at research together, develop new projects, look at, for instance, the questions on water. It's the University of La Manouba in Tunisia who's leading on it, where there is so little water, so much need for finding new solutions. So to create a network around the Mediterranean and to create a network globally to look at how to actually address the issues of water together in curriculum, embarking the students, really making them aware of their capacity to act and engage. And then also to engage in research projects, leveraging the opportunities for funding, but co-creating new dynamics, new kinds of research, and then publish about it in ways that were actually moving away from the traditional ways. Because what in this collaborative and alliance building dynamics is also required is for us to crack open the commercial publishing house systems, the traditional assessment of staff, and the traditional assessment of students, the way in which interdisciplinary gets a real place within the institution, and we're not there yet. It's been years and years that we talk about it, but we do not implement it, we do not practice it, because there are still these siloed approaches to what we do, and the siloed approaches to recognition of what is a value within, and then we come back to the issue of more competition, then looking at what is needed when cooperation is actually to really get into play. So I have much more to say, but conscious of time, giving the floor back to the others. I think that's really essential, is collaboration, is dynamic of really creating something new, but it needs to be incredibly intentional. If it is not, then it will not happen.
Thank you so much, Lily. And if I may add one thing, what you talk about, the cooperation and thinking outside of the box approach with a higher education institution, is that our students and youth should be at the core of the cooperation process. And with that said, if I may, I'd like to give the floor to Sophia to go further into, the steps that higher education institutions can take and should take to include students and youth as co-creators of transformation, while ensuring that sustainability and social justice remain central to the transformative agenda for the future.
Thank you, Lily. In history, we usually know when big changes happen after it happened, but now we're witnessing, being witness of something new, that is the role of young people in education. More and more young people understand their education as something that touches them in first person. Something that happens before, for example, in climate change, that a lot more students, more younger generations were working to prevent climate change because they feel these quote that rightly said that, right? The house is burning. Well, now this is happening, but with education. I see it every day with the students, with the young people I work with, in the projects we work and implement in the ground. Students want to be part of the decisions, want to be part of what they are studying, how they are learning, all of these, and we cannot keep pushing them back. So this new movement is growing slowly but steady, that is going to translate in an education movement. And in the higher institutions of the future, students are the protagonists. Students feel part of, students feel that they can take ownership of their learning. And how we get to that future by, for example, making students be part of the co-creation of the curriculums, that co-creation is something that highly mentioned before, for example, so they can be part of these when we teach and how we teach it. That is what something that Elisa mentioned, for example, one of the speakers on the first day. And we also get to this future, to this ecosystem where students feel that the university is a place that they feel listened, they feel heard, they feel like they can propose projects. As Heidi mentioned as well, that this is a place that also helps them to insert in the workforce. We get to that ecosystem as well by creating spaces where students are being listened to. In all the projects I'm part of, and we live in my organization, students have so many things to say, and even we start all the projects that we do with one question, that is, someone ever, like your parents, a teacher, a minister of education, asked you, what do you think of your education? Something so basic, right? And 90% of them tells us no, no one ever asked me. So if we could just change that, it doesn't even require investment. If we work in universities, if we work with students, if we are teachers, just open up the conversation. You will see that they will be non-stop of the suggestions they have because they are really worried about their education. Education is something that actually concerns them. What is the future is going to be? I'm going to be prepared or not. And also it's important to institutionalize the spaces where students are going to be participating. Not only student creating or ensuring that there are student unions in their universities, but what's the power of those student unions? That's a concern that always keeps coming up. You know, we have a student union, for example, they say, but we cannot propose anything new. We don't have budget. We don't have the support of the teachers. So a place like that doesn't have any power. So it's like it's toughness, right? So we have to go beyond that and acknowledge this that is happening, that the students wanted to be part more. They are pushing to actually take this ownership of their learning and their education.
Thank you so much, Sophia. If the answer of someone ever, as we know, let's try today that we be the yes to the someone ever starting from now. And last but not the least, to conclude this round of discussion, we would like to go back to our public sector delegate, Abdirazak, to talk about innovation, but not innovation in terms of technological sense, but innovative mentality and approaches. What are some of the good policy and project practices and innovations that are needed to ensure accessible and equity higher education system by 2050, particularly with the staff?
Thank you, Lily, for that question. I just want to, because we can also be short. I think we talk about the challenges that we are facing in terms of accessibility, and particularly the issue of affordability and being limited public higher education, and with the private, that means that so many people, there are barriers to accessing higher education to many young people. The issue of scholarships and having loan-based initiatives is an issue that you can be able to. Many countries are doing it, but it's something that can be able to help young people access affordable higher education in the future. In terms of inclusivity, also we have. We can leverage the issue of distance learning to have access because of different circumstances of young people, whether it is financial or maybe job, something like that. In Kenya, we have the first distance learning institution that was established in 2022, and that is what also as a country in Somalia also leveraging. Not an institution, but the existing higher education institution to leverage on technology and also learning, mechanism, so that we can be able to have the young people access higher education. The other one is about the qualification framework that I also talked about. That also paves way for transitioning to the next stage from post-secondary, from secondary to higher education. And I think I just want also to wrap up, to really concur about the issue of what they say about collaboration. Collaboration in terms of different aspects. The African Union this year is the year of education, or in particular, like generally. But there is also a need to have collaboration in terms of research. We have the, I said about the African, Association of African Universities coming together regionally and then globally. In terms of also partnership, in terms of funding is an issue. I talked about the issue of universities having, conducting research and also disseminating. We have there is an organization called Education Sub-Saharan Africa that conducts. They don't conduct, research, but they do research on who is doing research where and the what. For example, like how many, research, who is doing research in, Africa or Global South, or where is it, what kind of research is it, by having that kind of review of research, what type of research that was done, who is doing what, is there any collaboration between that kind of research between the universities in Africa, or maybe is it globally, and also having access to funding and communication also. That's why I said about the university, the role of universities, or maybe research centers, solving the problems of health problems, like specifically in Africa that I talked about. So conducting research, is not only enough, but disseminating that research, on communicating to the policymakers and making decisions are very important. And in terms of last one is financing. We talked about innovative financing. That is very important. Commitment from the government, domestic funding. Currently, so we have total budget of government budget, only 10% going to education, and less than 10% that going to higher education again. So we need to have a lot of funding commitment, the domestic funding to go to higher education. And even this little is going more, when you subdivide that kind of funding, it's more going to also recurrent expenditure. But we want more, funding going to the research and also for the development and expansion of accessibility that we are talking about, and affordability, so that more young people can be able to afford. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Abdi Razak. Thank you so much for bringing us back to be grounded in why we're here. Talk about the basics of accessibility and the strategies to combat it. And thank you for bringing up the topic of financing, which is very, very important. We have a lot of dreams, we have a lot of visions. We can all talk about A, B, C, and D, but nothing happens until the commitment is backed up with actual resources to support the action to be implemented. And this is a call, not just to the panelists or the audiences here, but to the wider audience and stakeholder in higher education. If you want to do something, make sure you come with an offer backed up with resources to actually implement your idea. So thank you so much for that. And also, as you mentioned, this is the year of education for Africa. But this should not just be the year of education for Africa. It should be the year of education every year for every region of the world. And we need to make sure that we always, put higher education in the front line of the work, in linking with the priorities that take place in whatever regions and whatever priorities that it has. And I know our very dear hosts have been flashing the board to me on the timer. But with your kind approval, I would really like to request to take 2 questions or interventions from the floor. Or AI, we already have a hands up, and we also would like to invite our colleague from UNU as well. So, okay, we'll take this lady here, and then, yes.
Many thanks for sharing the slides.
It doesn't work. It's very, the sound is not very,
yes, it's not,
Many thanks for sharing plans and ideas. So I came here all the way from Latvia and representing also European university leaders, so which is a network of 9 institutions. And I was really very interested how you see the features of higher education and what's behind the story. So many thanks for the insights. And what I can share as a case study from Europe is this new European University program, creating networks. And at the moment, we have 64 these kind of alliances and networks, so which try to answer this question of connectivity and how this works. And so from the perspective inside this network, so I wanted to share what we identified as trends. So some things are similar what you shared, but there are some few details which differ. So we look at changing student body as one of the key issues to be explored. So second one is new technologies and IA, so which is common. Then as a third one, so what are the new learning ways if we have this changing student body? The fourth one is, so what does it mean, PhD studies in universities of applied sciences and as a career for a researcher? So in here, I would like to make a remark that our niche is universities of applied sciences and not big universities. So what is the different role of these universities for research and therefore the region? So this is where I come to this first point, that regional impact. So for these universities, so how to ensure the regional impact and listen to regional stakeholders. And the sixth, actually, so why deeper international cooperation and why we need this kind of alliances and why it is important for us. And yes, and then based on this, actually, so what are our fears from this alliance perspective? So first one is keeping and maintaining the diversity of education, because we hear a lot of concentration of the resources for bigger universities, a lot of consolidation. But if we want to sustain a well-managed ecosystem, so we need this diversity. And this is where comes this different role of universities of applied sciences. Then second one is how to manage complexity, actually. So we know part of these 9 institutions dealing with 9 different national regulations of education, how to ensure that we really have seamless mobility of students, researchers, and so on. And the third one, which is connected to this complexity, then what will be affordable higher education if we want to maintain this complexity? Yes, and for the role of teachers. So I also wanted to share our idea of having entrepreneur and innovators. So that's a term created for our alliance, combining the role of entrepreneur, educator, and researcher. So this is how we see, so what is the capacity needed to be. So many thanks, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us and for really bringing out the idea of entrepreneurs and innovators. Very, very great idea that combines the diversity, but also really brings the interdisciplinarity to the picture to allow us to work together. And if I may, I really want to invite our focal point and we will co-launch the AI action group under UNICE with us to go further explanation of the 5-step action groups and the potential deliverables that we would like to invite the higher education that delegates who are present here to join us. So the floor, if you may, can we please provide the speaker to the room, this gentleman sitting right there.
Hello, there you go. I'll make this very quickly, everyone. I know you guys are excited for the next session. But we've been hearing a lot about AI throughout this 3-day session. If you've gotten the chance to visit the booths on this floor, on the floor below as well. I think many booths have, or many schools have initiatives on AI, at least in Korea. Professor Park also mentioned AI a lot in his second intervention. But relevant to today's theme, by the way, I'm Jerome. I'm from the United Nations University. And UNU and UNESCO ESL have recently launched an action group called the Futures of Higher Education and AI. And our action group aims to explore what are both the benefits and the threats of AI in the higher education sector. So whether it's in teaching and learning of both students and teachers, whether in research or even in the administration of and management of universities, we can use and implement AI in those tools. So we want to explore what would be the impacts of these AI tools and adoption of AI tools to teachers, to students, to researchers, to university administrators, but looking through the lens of sustainability. And that's what I want to emphasize is the key word is sustainability. It has been mentioned a lot as well today at today's discussion, because we want to think long-term. We want to look at the intersection of AI, artificial intelligence, and sustainability. We want to implement these tools that are environmentally friendly. If many of you know, I think many of us know already that AI tools, generative AI tools, will consume a lot of energy, has a lot of carbon footprint and water footprint. I read a research actually just yesterday that generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, actually for each 5 queries that you input, consume half a liter of water. So it's for every 5 query, you need 5 liters of water. Why? Because the data centers overheat. So you need to cool down the data centers. For each 5 queries, you use this. So think about how many queries you input on ChatGPT every day, and think about how many people use ChatGPT every day. So just think about the sustainability aspect of AI in higher education. So again, I'm from the United Nations University. Our action group is composed of partners from researchers to professors to youth leaders, but we're also looking for more partners from the Global South, women in tech, youth leaders. I'm not sure, we don't have the QR code, but if you just search higher education, AI, action group, our action group should come up first. But I'll be happy to discuss more in details about our action group after this session. Again, I'm Jerome from UNU. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jerome. Really appreciate that. So, thank you so much. I want to see if our panelists have anything to respond before we have a message for Ways Forward.
A message from?
For Ways Forward. I want to see if you have any comments or respond.
Well, I have one. I never use ChatGPT. So I don't waste that water.
Congratulations. Outstanding. Yeah.
No, but very, very important, many points. And we were discussing before the session started. I think this drying out, let's use that same metaphor, but this drying out of some of the disciplines within universities is a tragedy for the future. We see the humanities fade out. We see the learning of history, the learning of languages, because everybody will go to these Google Translates or other. We don't learn the things anymore. We don't make the effort to actually read the literature from Somalia, from Argentina, from Korea. We do not go to these different places, and we actually lose out on our capacity to be the kind of people that we would wish to be in a world in which we want to live. We do not want to end up in modern times from Charlie Chaplin. We want to end up in a world where we want to live together and make a better world. So I think higher education has that capacity and has that promise within to actually make the very big difference in moving us into the future. And you said it, but we said it all. We see around the world something tragic happening. There are all the budgets to education are being slashed. Look at Trump, what he's doing in the US. Look at what's happening in the Netherlands, my country. Look at what's happening in France, where universities were all closed yesterday because the budgets have been slashed so much that the universities cannot deliver anymore on any of the promises that we actually ask them to deliver on. So the future of education at large, again, from pre-primary through to lifelong, if it's not supported properly, then it will not happen. But that will come through also public engagement with the universities, because if the public is in agreement, then the tax bills can go into education and the taxes can go to higher education. So we have to do something here to really show why higher education matters. The for whom you asked the question earlier, it's for all of us. It's not for the happy few, it's for all of us. And then again, one last thing, finished 20 minutes delayed. Okay, yes. One last thing, we've seen twice the movie on Korea, where the first thing that UNESCO gave was what? When rebuilding. It was book textbooks. So that's how we can get into the future.
Thank you so much. Okay, we have 30 seconds for one.
What is it?
Someone wants to,
10,
yeah.
10 much?
Well, yeah, I have 110 seconds. That's also. Sorry about that.
I was going to say that the UNESCO's textbook support was instrumental in creating the momentum for the Korean education. That's really important, and I really appreciate. I used that textbook when I was in primary school. And I just want to reiterate the opening remark by Charlotte, and just echoing the importance of overcoming singular vision, singular value, driven by specific technologies or social direction. So the higher education is the place to resist that. And to be successful, I think your point is extremely important, getting more voices from students, and then more dialogue. And then students' expectation of higher education is really getting lower and lower these days. And so that's a real danger. And I think we have to overcome that.
Yeah, just to conclude, just maybe 30 seconds or 10 seconds. Yeah, we talked about, the expansion and access to higher education. I just want to add one more thing about, the values, depending on the curriculum that what we are learning. You expanded to higher education, yes. We talked about, expansion and access to higher education. But if we are not very careful about what our students are learning, and the innovation and the dreams that we have cannot be able to be achieved. The professor talked about how Republic of Korea came up from all the the war and rebuilding. We are also equally rebuilding our states from the civil war, all more than 30 years, and we want to see now our curriculum expanded, not only bringing out engineers or doctors with skills, knowledge, but we want also them to come up with the right attitude, with the values, the integrity that Mahim is talking about. We want engineers with integrity, we want doctors with integrity, passion, values, and peace building also, especially on the going back to our history. We want to see societal integration, peace building, and values. That is now in terms of the curriculum and what the academic aspect is talking about, to include that with now the aspect of the values that we're talking about and we aspire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, just to finish up, I think it's very important to say that, for example, in this forum, we're 250 people, at least registered. We already work education in different angles, from the university, students, young people from different parts, different sides of education. But if it only stays with us, it's not going to be long lasting. That's the hard truth. So to create this social contract for education, this shared vision, we need to make contagious this idea, this feeling of urgency that we need to do something now to save the future of education and our future of us, humanity. And the homework is when we go back to our countries, what are we going to do to ensure that we are more working for education?
Thank you so much. And ways forward, I think we all have taken a lot of maybe some of the steps that we can take, whatever stakeholder status you carry. But from UNESCO side, we'd like to share 3 follow-up documents upon the conclusion of this session and the forum overall. Number 1, UNESCO hosted a forum on transforming knowledge in Addis Ababa in collaboration with the African Union, precisely because of the year of education. And there has been a lot of outcome analysis that's been going on. So we'd like to share those with everyone to further promote the development at regional level, at local level, but moving to global thinking and global actions. And number 2, in regard to the UNESCO and UN Office of South-South Cooperation's launch on the South-South University Cooperation Network, we'll be sharing the registration form for member universities and partners to understand how we can participate within the 4 functions of higher education for this cross-regional working group in co-designing science, technology, and innovation solutions for 2026 to 2030, involving the next generation of agenda setting of the UN. And third, we're going to share the registration form also for the UN High C Action Group on the futures of higher education and artificial intelligence in collaboration with the UN University. And once again, I think everyone has been also inspired with the approach yesterday to make sure that digital transformation can take this human-centered and right-based approach, which is reflected in our action group, and hope that we can welcome whoever's interested in this topic to join the deliverables that can be meaningful and impactful to higher education stakeholders. And last message that we really hope everyone can take away from this session is that higher education is a bridge. It's a bridge that links knowledge to practices, is a bridge that links education system to industry and communities, is a bridge that links different regions, generations, and sectors. So it's a bridge. But for this bridge, we need to consider that we have more than 254 million students who need to cross this bridge. And they absolutely need to be at the center in making this bridge sturdy and long-lasting for the future generations as well. The young people will be at the core, not as beneficiaries, but also as decision makers and leaders who can push forward with the launch of solutions. And we really call for higher education stakeholders to support them and to work together. Because by the end of the day, it's not that our future are the young people's, it's that our future are the young people. So thank you so much for joining us at the Futures of Higher Education session today. Please give another round of applause to our outstanding panelists who contributed so much to the valuable insights. And thanks to our organizer who were so patient with us and our partners were at present, like you. Thank you so much.